This is our biography on George Orwell. This is to go in collaboration with our film on Animal Farm, to which we will leave a link in the description. George Orwell was born in Montehari, Bengal, India in 1903. His real name was Eric Arthur Blair. His father was a civil servant, so his mother took he and his sister to England, where they were from. He was constantly sick, battling diseases such as the flu and bronchitis. He wrote his first poem at age 4. He has reported to quote, "I had the lonely child's habit of making up stories and holding imaginary conversations. I think from the very start my literary ambitions were mixed up with the feeling of being isolated and undervalued." Eventually he went to boarding school at St. Cyprian's in 1911. After his studies there, he won a scholarship to Wellington College and Eton College, but he had no money to go to university, so he joined the India Imperial Police Force in 1922. But he wanted to be an author, so soon after, he wrote his first novel, which is called Down and Out in Paris and London. This was published in 1933. This outlined the life of the working poor in these two cities. They matched up with many of his own personal experiences, but he didn't want to embarrass his family, so he took on the pseudonym George Orwell. In 1934, the next year, he published another book called Burmese Days. This took a dark look at British colonialism in India. In 1936, he married Eileen O'Shaughnessy. In the same year, in December, he joined Francisco Franco in the Spanish Civil War. He was badly injured, being shot in the arm and the throat, so they returned to England. In 1938, he contracted tuberculosis. He struggled with this for the rest of his life, because at the time, there was no sufficient cure for the disease. In order to distract himself, he took to more writing assignments, and eventually got a job with BBC, or the British Broadcasting Channel. This was around when World War II was starting up, so he acted as a propagandist. But he resigned in 1943. He didn't like acting this way, and he's quoted to have said, "Something halfway between a girls' school and a lunatic asylum, and all we're doing at present was useless, or slightly worse than useless. I was wasting my own time and public money on doing work that produced no result. I believe that in the present political situation of broadcasting British propaganda to India is an almost hopeless task." Later on, he published a book called Animal Farm in 1945. This is a satirical work that outlined the Soviet Union's communism. To get a better look of what Animal Farm was about, you can see the description to go to our video. In 1949, he wrote a book about 1940, and he wrote a book called 1984. This was a bleak vision of the future. Later, the next year, he died on January 21st, 1950, at age 46. Thank you for listening to our biography. Now we will move on to some vocabulary and from literature and from the story.
These are the vocabulary and literary terms for Animal Farm. Our first vocabulary word is cynical, which means bitterly mocking. And vivacious, you should know this, it's a vocabulary word, lively and spirited. Irrepressible, which means impossible to control or restrain. Posthumously, after one's death. Controversies, disputes, embolden, encourage, made brave. Countenance, facial expression, tumult, commotion, and unanimously in complete agreement. Now we'll be doing the literary terms. Our first literary term is propaganda, which means something that is plainly written to persuade the reader to take the author's side in an ongoing issue. And next we have irony, which conveys the meaning other than what is stated, and symbolism, like the flag, a person, place, or thing, the flag, that means something in addition to itself, the Soviet Union. Persuasion, an argument that motivates the listener to change his ideas and actions. and situational irony, a type of irony that violates normal expectations.
Lastly, this is our analysis of Animal Farm, specifically the scenes that we filmed for our project. Now, we kind of did an overview of the whole book, so I've decided to just do a quick analysis of the whole thing. Animal Farm was written by George Orwell, as previously mentioned, as a satirical work on communism in the Soviet Union, and it explores the flaws of the idea. Now, in theory, communism should be well and good, right? Everybody does equal work and reaps equal benefits. However, this is not so because humankind is corrupt, and therefore there will be some who choose not to work and still gain an equal amount to those who work harder. This is why communism does not work, and this is explored in Animal Farm. We can see the pigs acting as the leaders who keep the poor workers uneducated and therefore unable to discern what is right from wrong. Everything starts off all well and good, with Old Major telling everyone about a revolution that is to happen, and the revolution does eventually happen, in which the animals overthrow their abusive master, Mr. Jones. Everything runs smoothly for a time until the pigs start coming to power and changing the 7 commandments, which they had instated previously. And this is ironic because the pigs are the ones that came up with all of the principles of what they call animalism, which matches up with communism, but they're the ones that break the rules and change the rules. And towards the end of the book, they are the ones who become the most like humans, which they discouraged all of the other animals from doing. All of the other animals, of course, are uneducated and are therefore unable to defend themselves, as they cannot find the correct words to. A good example of this is Boxer. Boxer is a horse, and he's quite dim-witted. He's very strong, and he does the most work out of everybody, but he ends up dying in the end, and in fact he ends up being killed, technically, by Napoleon, as he is sent off by a person who kills horses when they're old. Now let's talk briefly about the 7 commandments which are set in place to help the pigs govern the animal farm. Number 1. Whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. Number 2. Whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. Number 3. No animal shall wear clothes. Number 4. No animal shall sleep in a bed. Number 5. No animal shall drink alcohol. Number 6. No animal shall kill any other animal. And number 7. All animals are equal. Now, by the end of the story, the pigs have changed the majority of these commandments and eventually have eradicated all of them. Let's go over the commandments that were changed. But first, let's talk about this. To simplify these commandments for the sheep, the pigs instate this one statement that 2 legs bad and 4 legs good. Let's talk about this statement. It matches up fairly well with commandments 1 and 2. This is changed by the end of the story when the pigs end up walking on their hind legs with the sheep following in suit, then singing 4 legs good, 2 legs better. The pigs also begin to wear Mr. Jones's clothes, which is in direct opposition of commandment number 3, no animal shall wear clothes. But before this, the pigs began sleeping in beds. But the pigs get around rule number 4 by changing the commandment to no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. Napoleon soon begins to execute animals, which is in direct defiance of commandment number 6, but he changes this commandment to no animal shall kill any other animal without reason. Eventually the pigs begin drinking alcohol, and this commandment is changed to no animal shall drink alcohol to excess. And by the end of the story, all of the laws have been removed and is replaced with one law, which is derived from number 7, but is completely contradictory of itself. It is changed to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Now, this commandment is in complete defiance with itself. If some animals are more equal than other animals, therefore, Not all animals are equal. The changing of the commandments and convincing animals that their memories do not serve them well is just one of the methods that the pigs uses to gain complete and utter control over the animal farm, and having more privileges themselves, and keeping the other animals dim, uneducated, and underfed, and gaining all of the wealth for themselves.